During dinner, a life-changing message was revealed. Leave now without telling my son. The air felt charged as Sarah set the table, the clink of forks against plates echoing in their small kitchen. It was a comforting routine, one that wrapped them in laughter and warmth. Jake filled their modest home with boundless energy, his bright eyes sparkling with dreams of the future that Sarah fought so hard to provide. Every night, despite everything, they created their own magic dinners that faded the harshness of reality, if only for a moment. But this night was different. A knock at the door shattered their safe bubble. Sarah's heart raced, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Jake, completely innocent to the storm brewing, answered the door, revealing a figure from Sarah's past, her estranged father, a man who left a chasm in her heart. The tension crackled in the air like buzzing electricity. "Dad," she breathed, emotions colliding inside her. They stood staring at one another, awkward and heavy, while Jake watched from behind, confused but curious. It was a moment straight out of a surreal nightmare, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had worked for was hanging in the balance. As they sat down for dinner, the atmosphere thickened. Glances were exchanged, a battle silently raging between the three of them. Sarah tried to focus on the fragrant spaghetti and meatballs she had prepared, a ritual meal that normally filled their hearts with joy, but tonight, every bite felt choking. Memories of his abandonment bubbled to the surface, and the pain resurfaced like a wound unhealed. Then the words came, delivered with trembling hands. "Leave now without telling my son." Her father's voice broke the fragile facade, unleashing a whirlwind of emotions. Shock hung in the air, gripping her heart fiercely. Jake, sensing the shift, looked from his mother to his grandfather, confusion and curiosity mingling on his young face. "Why would I leave? Who are you to tell me that?" Sarah felt the rage boil over, old wounds gaping wider. "You've had your chance." She had spent years building her life, pouring every ounce of love and hard work into her son. How could he come back now, demanding she run away? Jake's innocent questions shattered Sarah's resolve. "Why are you both mad?" The genuine worry in his voice only added to the chaos. He turned to his grandfather. "Are you a hero?" The weight of Jake's hope was a knife twisted in Sarah's chest. She wanted to scream the truth, to protect him from the man who had hurt her. But how could she break her son's heart? Before they could unravel fully, the world outside intervened. News of an economic crisis swept through their town like a wildfire, fears of lost jobs seeping into the very walls of their home. Suddenly, decisions became ties to the past Sarah thought she had severed. Would she uphold false family loyalty or stand firm in her values, protecting Jake at all costs? As the chaotic conversation escalated, emotions flared, voices clashed, and the table became a battlefield of legacy and sacrifice. Just when it seemed a glimmer of understanding might emerge, the door creaked open once more, bringing with it the scent of impending change. The future felt uncertain, and Sarah's heart was heavy with unanswered questions. Could she confront the ghosts of her past? Would she shield Jake from a world he didn't need to bear? The air grew thick with unspoken words, and the warmth of their family dinner felt like a distant memory, leaving Sarah grappling with the weight of choices that loomed ahead. Just when clarity seemed possible, the simmering tension paved the way for deeper revelations that could fracture their fledgling ties. What would she choose? Would she find the strength to face the truth before it slipped away forever? The silence hung heavy in the room, pressing against Sarah like the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears. She locked eyes with her father. The years melted away, leaving the raw emotion of a girl who once craved a father's love, but learned long ago to push it aside. The guilt clawed at her, twisting like a knife. At that moment, Jake, still the innocent heart of this chaotic scene, shifted in his chair. His small voice broke through the tension. "Can't we just eat?" His eyes darted between the adults, confusion clouding his bright expression. "Dinner is supposed to be happy." Sarah felt her heart break a little more. How could she explain that this dinner was far from what they always tried to make it? "I'm sorry, baby. Just let me talk to Grandpa for a moment." With a nod, Jake quietly resumed poking at his food, his tiny fork moving aimlessly around as he tried to make sense of the world falling apart around him. The sight twisted Sarah's gut further, knowing he wasn't just losing a meal but a sense of what family meant. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice firmer than the tremors of her heart. "You didn't care enough to stick around before. Why now?" Her father shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated. Complicated? Sarah shot back, her chest tightening. You expect me to believe that? You're just going to waltz back in as if you didn't break my heart? He inhaled deeply, as though gathering the pieces of his strength. There's a reason for this, he finally said, his voice steadier. The economic crisis, it's worse than you think. I wouldn't ask if it weren't urgent. Urgent. That word resonated painfully in the air. Didn't she already have enough urgency in her life? Jake needed stability, not more chaos. You think I'd just leave? After everything? Sarah. The way he said her name sounded almost pleading. This isn't just about us. It's about Jake too. If the town crumbles, if I can't support him but you haven't supported us in years. Her voice echoed in the kitchen, filled with the fury and pain of a past she had worked tirelessly to overcome. Jake looked up sharply, his tiny brow furrowed in worry. Mom, his voice carried a tremble that pulled at Sarah's heart. She had fought for him, built a life that might one day give him what she missed. The very essence of her choices collided with her father's stunning revelation. Just tell me what it is you're not saying, she pleaded, desperation creeping in. What is happening? What do you know? It's not just about jobs, he hesitated, glancing nervously at Jake. There are people in the community they risk so much. Those who you think were fine are struggling. There's fear out there and it spreads like wildfire. Fear. That word settled among them like a dark fog, wrapping itself around their hopes and dreams. How many times had she pushed through fear? Would she ever let that define their lives again? Just tell me why I should leave everything I've built here. Sarah pressed, emotion spilling from her voice. Why should I trust you again? I don't want to break your trust. I want to protect you both. Protect. That word struck her deeper. As she glanced at Jake, she saw the potential in him, a future full of hope, untainted by the past. But what if staying means facing something scarier than what you're hinting at? Suddenly a loud crash sounded outside, pulling them back to the present. They rushed to the window, hearts pounding in synchrony as they watched chaos unfurl. A truck had overturned, debris scattered everywhere, and people rushed into the street, their faces painted with panic. The world outside, once so secure, was unraveling right in front of them. Heart racing, Sarah turned away from the sight. Her father's words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. What lay beyond this moment? What decisions awaited her? The floor beneath her feet felt shaky, and for the first time, uncertainty surged through her veins. Could her father be right? Was there a truth lurking in the shadows that could tear their fragile family even further apart? Before she could unravel the threads of her emotions or contemplate the risks ahead, Jake's innocent question pierced through. Mom, are we going to be okay? In that moment, Sarah realized the choice ahead wasn't just about her. The stakes felt higher than ever, her heart battling the tension rising within. Would she take a leap into uncertainty for her son? Or would she fight the familiar battle from her past? Confident yet terrified? As she searched for the right words, the door creaked open again and another visitor stepped inside, the reality of their situation growing larger than she could comprehend. Her heart thundered. What new chapter was about to unfold? The moment the door swung open wider, a familiar figure stepped in, casting a long shadow across the chaotic scene. It was Emily, Sarah's childhood friend. Her eyes flashed between Sarah, her father, and Jake with a look of concern that quickly morphed into determined resolve. What's going on? She asked, her voice barely breaking the tension. Emily, it's not a good time, Sarah replied, panic creeping into her tone. She wanted to shield Jake from whatever was happening, to preserve the innocent joy in his eyes. But Emily was here, and she wouldn't let this moment slip away unnoticed. I just saw the truck flip over outside, Emily said, her voice steady. I came to see what happened. It's a mess out there. I think it's time we talk about what's really happening in this town. Jake looked up, confusion still wrestling within his little heart. What mess? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. Swallowing hard, Sarah felt the burden of truth press down even harder on her. How could she explain the turmoil when even she didn't fully understand it? But Emily's steady gaze seemed to bolster her courage. Honey, I need you to listen to me, she began, kneeling down to Jake's level. Things are changing, and sometimes it's really hard to see what's coming. Mom, what's going on? Jake's innocent voice cracked, the worry in his eyes evident. Jake, where Sarah searched for the right words but felt only fear swimming in her chest. How could she take away his sense of safety? We're just going through some, family stuff. Emily rose, her brows knitted in concern for her friend. Sarah, you can't keep shielding him forever. He needs to know about the dangers. It's not just your family. The whole town is shaking. Dangers? Jake asked, wide-eyed, shifting in his chair. From what? From people who are losing everything. Emily's voice turned firm, determined. They're desperate, Jake. They may do things that are scary. Even Sarah interjected. Stop. I don't want him to hear any more. He doesn't need to know worries that would keep him up at night. Then you're burying your head in the sand. Emily retorted, her voice rising. You can't just pretend everything is fine when it's not. Your father has a chance to fix things. The tension snipped like a taut string. Sarah turned to her dad, a storm brewing inside. Is this what you came here for? To drag us back into a world from which I fought so hard to escape? You knew I was finally happy. Sarah. He snapped, his eyes wide. This is bigger than you, than your happiness. It's about survival. Jake sat silently, eyes darting between the adults like a ping-pong ball. Mom, I don't understand. We're just having an adult conversation. Sweetheart, Sarah soothed, taking a breath to steady herself. You'll understand when you're older. Will I? Jake asked softly. What if I don't want to wait? The honesty pierced Sarah, and suddenly she felt the weight of all her decisions pressing down like an anchor. What if we could protect you now by sharing the truth? Emily stepped forward, her voice a gentle murmur bringing an air of clarity. Jake, we're all scared right now. Scared of what's happening outside and what's happening in our hearts. But there's more than one way to face it. We can face it together. Without warning, the lights flickered, plunging the room into shadows for a moment before the power surged back. It felt like a metaphor for their lives, oscillating between light and dark. See? Jake's voice broke through again, this time lighter. Everything's okay. The lights are back. Inexplicably, Sarah felt a moment of warmth despite the chaos, her son's innocence wrapping around her heart like a safety net. But as her dad's pleading gaze met hers once more, uncertainty bubbled underneath. What would be the right decision? Would unearthing the truth bring safety or stir the embers of chaos even further? As she looked at each face in the room, understanding washed over her. Help might come from the most unlikely places. Emily, she finally breathed. If we're facing this as a community, then we need to know everything. Can't shield Jake from what's happening anymore. Jake glanced up. Curiosity ignited within him. Are we going to help everyone? And at that moment, Sarah knew they were stepping into the heart of something much larger than fear. They took a breath, bracing for the next words that would spill forth from the sudden realization of their path. But as Sarah opened her mouth to speak, the rat-a-tat sound of knocking echoed from the door, louder than the thunder of her heart. Who's that now? She wondered out loud, both anxious and intrigued. What new revelations awaited them just beyond that door? The knocking intensified, a persistent echo that sliced through the thick tension in the room. Sarah's heart raced, uncertainty pooling in her stomach. Was this another layer of chaos knocking at their door? Should I get it? Jake asked, his youthful innocence shining through. He was curious, wanting to help, feeling the weight of the moment in a way only a child could. Stay here, Sarah said, not wanting to frighten him more than he already was. She made her way to the door, each step feeling like a small battle against her growing anxiety. Be careful, Emily warned softly, her eyes fixed unwaveringly on the door, as if sensing a threat lurking just outside. Taking a deep breath, Sarah reached for the handle, pausing to glance at her father. He wore a look of grim expectation, as if he already knew what might lie beyond. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment, and there was a shared understanding, a flicker of fear but also a hint of determination. She opened the door slowly, the creaking sound amplifying the dread in the air. On the other side stood a figure, a tall man with an urgency etched into his features. His clothes were tattered, rugged, a stark contrast to the ordered life Sarah had tried so desperately to create. Please, he gasped, glancing nervously over his shoulder. I need your help. Who are you? Sarah asked, instinctively stepping back, creating distance between her son and this stranger. The man's eyes darted to Jake, then back to Sarah, desperation pooling in his voice. I'm just trying to get my family to safety. There are things happening, men are coming. They're searching for people. Searching for what? Why here? Emily stepped forward, her tone firm but laced with concern, making it clear they wouldn't be easily intimidated. Because of the truck, the man said, panic rising in his voice. Flipped, and we tried to warn people. But it's too late now. They're taking anyone they think is involved. Taking them where? Jake interjected, the innocence in his question cutting through the weight of the moment like a knife. The man hesitated, his expression pained. I don't know. Just trust me, you don't want to find out. You all have to leave now. Sarah's heart raced at the tension embedded in the air. There must be some way we can help. No. He interrupted vehemently. You have to protect your son. Just go. Leave this place. Don't tell him anything. It'll only make it worse. Jake looked up at Sarah confused. Mom, who is he? What's going on? Just wait here a moment, honey, Sarah said softly, her heart torn. She turned to the man. But we can't just, please. He insisted. They won't stop. They're desperate and you don't know what they're capable of. I've seen it. You need to run. The urgency in his voice pierced through her thoughts, but the very notion of running terrified her more than confronting whatever was outside. She glanced back at her father, the weight of their unspoken fears hanging in the air, and then she looked at Jake, whose wide eyes were fixed on the stranger, innocence hanging on every word. Mom, we can help him, right? A part of her screamed to protect her son, to save him from the truth, while another part felt the truth pressing down like an iron shroud. What could they do? What did she owe to this man and the world he was warning her about? In that moment, the door creaked in a way that felt almost like a call to action, and she knew the decision had to be made quickly. They could either step into the light of uncertainty together or cling to the shadows of safety that might already be fading. Okay, she said, her voice trembling yet firm. We'll help you. But just as her words hung in the air, a distant rumble of engines grew louder, drowning out all reason. The sound promised chaos, and her heart sank at the sudden realization. What had they just walked into? The man's eyes widened in terror. You have to move now. They're here. And as Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her once more, she clutched her son's hand tightly, uncertainty flooding over her. What lay ahead was shrouded in danger. But one thing was clear, they had crossed a point of no return. Now the question remained. How could they protect each other as the storm closed in? The roar of engines thrummed like a heartbeat outside, growing closer with each second. Sarah's instincts kicked in, a surge of adrenaline pushing her to act. She tightened her grip on Jake's hand, feeling the warmth of his small fingers gripping back, grounding her amidst the chaos swirling around them. The stranger flung himself across the threshold, urgency crackling in the air. We don't have time. His voice was barely a whisper, but the fear it carried was loud enough to shatter any lingering doubts. Jake, stay close, she instructed, pulling him toward the hallway, her feet moving quicker than her mind could register. Emily remained close behind, eyes darting between the door and their new ally, the tension pulsing like a living thing around them. Where can we go? Emily asked, her voice steady, laced with resolve even as panic threatened to slip through. The woods. It's our only chance, the man said, casting a terrified glance back toward the door. His presence was a stark reminder of how quickly fear could seize control. They'll be here any minute. But what about your family? Sarah questioned, caught in the swell of her own concern. A flicker of compassion ignited within her. This man was risking everything for something bigger than himself. He shook his head, a look of pain flashing across his face. They're gone. I was trying to save them, but I couldn't. His voice cracked, and for a brief moment, the weight of loss hung heavy in the air. Mom, I don't want to go into the woods, Jake whimpered, his small frame vibrating with fear. She could see the shadows of doubt creeping into his eyes. I know, sweetheart, she said softly, kneeling to his level. But we need to be brave. It's going to be okay, I promise. In that moment, Sarah wanted to believe those words. She wanted to believe that whatever lay ahead could be faced together. But uncertainty gnawed at her heart. They were being swept down a path that had no clear destination, and she worried it would lead them to dangers they weren't prepared for. Now, the man urged, his voice sharper this time. Move. We're out of time. With her heart pounding fiercely, Sarah tugged Jake into motion, the weight of her choices pressing against her. They hurried down the narrow hallway, shuffling past family photos adorned on the walls. They were frozen portraits of smiles and laughter, memories of a life that felt so far away now. The knocking transformed into a violent pounding, each hit echoing like a countdown. It threatened to shake the very foundations of their home, the safe haven she had built around her family. In that moment, home felt less like sanctuary and more like a trap. As they reached the back door, a wall of shadows appeared through the glass. Figures lurked, their intentions visible even from a distance. Panic crawled up her spine. It was too late for hesitation, too late for regrets. "Do you see that tree line?" The man pointed urgently. "You need to make it there. Once you do, stay low and move fast." "'Kay. I'm ready," Sarah breathed, although her heart was anything but calm. She looked at Jake, whose face was a mixture of trust and fear. "Stick with me, buddy. Whatever happens, we won't leave each other. I promise." Together, they flung the door wide and darted into the night, the cold air hitting their skin, jolting them alive. The sounds swirled around them, engine roars blending with their panicked breaths. But then came the gunshots, a jarring sound that split the air like thunder. It seemed to freeze time, their bodies paralyzed with terror, hearts pounding in unison. "Run!" the stranger shouted, his voice fierce. Now, they were propelled forward, and as Sarah glanced back, she felt the weight of that moment crashing down. Would they be hunted forever? Would they ever find safety again? Each step felt heavier as dread coiled around her heart, but she couldn't allow fear to consume them. They forged ahead, driven by the instinct to survive. And in that darkness, as they pressed deeper into the woods, a single thought echoed through her mind: what awaited them would either break them apart or unite them more fiercely than before. Just then, a flicker of movement caught her eye through the trees. "What is that?" she whispered. But her question lingered unasked, overshadowed by the urgency of their escape, as the trees loomed like sentinels, guarding secrets she feared to uncover. What might they stumble upon next? The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows through the dense foliage, and Sarah could hardly see where she was placing her feet. The ground was uneven, roots snaking out like trap doors, waiting to ensnare those who weren't careful. Every snap of a twig beneath their hurried steps sounded like a shot ringing in her ears. Fear clawed at her throat as she guided Jake through the underbrush, his small hand trembling in hers. "Keep your head down, just like we practiced," she whispered, hoping to soothe his racing heart. She couldn't see his face, but she could feel the apprehension radiating from him. The stranger led them deeper, darting between the tightly knitted trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the night. Behind them, the chaos of their home grew distant, but the sense of urgency remained. The pounding footsteps of their pursuers faded somewhat, but the fear still pulsed in her blood. "Over here," the man hissed, gesturing toward a thicket that provided a tangled cover. They plunged behind it, crouching low, packed tight together. Sarah's breath quickened, heart hammering fiercely in her chest as she wrapped her arms around Jake, squeezing as if her warmth could shield him from what had just been unleashed. Emily's face was taut, her eyes scanning the darkness around them, searching for any sign of movement. "Do you think they followed us?" she whispered, but Sarah could see the worry etched on her features. "I don't know," the stranger replied, his chest rising and falling swiftly. "But we can't stay here long. They'll search the area, and if they see movement—" His voice trailed off, the insinuation heavy in the air. The woods were alive with sounds of rustling leaves and distant animal calls, but to Sarah, it all felt like a symphony of danger. Suddenly, the silence was pierced by renewed shouts and the rumbling of vehicles echoing like thunder in the still night. Jake's grip tightened on her shirt, and he pressed against her side. "I'm scared," he murmured, his voice barely more than a breath. "I know, baby. Just breathe," she replied, her heart breaking for him. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, thoughts racing. How could one night unravel their lives? The memories of dinner around the table, warm laughter, and safety felt like a lifetime ago, and the future was a cloudy unknown. From their hiding spot, they could see sporadic beams of lights piercing through the trees as their pursuers began to search the area. The man's expression grew grave. "We need to go. Now. What about a plan?" Sarah protested, her heart beating wildly, unsure of what to do next. They had jumped straight from one looming danger to another, and she felt the weight of her responsibility pressing down on her. There is no plan beyond survival, he replied grimly. We just have to keep moving. With little choice, Sarah nodded, bolstering her courage. Adrenaline surged as she realized they could do this, they just had to be smart and quick. How many lives were in her hands now? Not just her own but Jake's, Emily's. She nodded again, drawing strength from their limited but burning hope. Okay, on my count, the stranger whispered, taking a deep breath as he peeked through the bushes. 3, 2, 1, go. They dashed from their concealment, hearts pounding, a desperate rush through the expanse of trees. The air rushed past them, carrying echoes of their pursuers and the unknown fate waiting ahead. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a clearing, moonlight pouring down like a spotlight on the trembling ground. In the distance, something shimmered, a hint of water or perhaps a structure. Over there. Sarah pointed, hope rekindling. But just as they sprinted toward the clearing, shadows loomed closer, surrounding them with a sense of impending doom. A voice suddenly broke through the night, harsh and cold. Stop right there. They froze, hearts sinking as realization washed over them. There was no way out. Or was there? Standing on the edge of that clearing, Sarah knew something crucial was about to transpire. What if this choice could change everything? But before she could voice her thoughts, Jake tugged at her sleeve, wide-eyed and innocent. Mom, what now? Their escape flared to life, but would they rise from the shadows or be swallowed whole? Every decision dug deeper into her soul. What awaited them just beyond the tree-line? Panic surged through Sarah as the voice echoed in the darkness, each word like a hammer striking against her chest. She turned, instinctively placing herself between Jake and the approaching threat. The gravity of the moment pressed down hard, an unbearable weight that made breathing feel like a chore. Stay close, she ordered softly, but her heart raced for the safety of her son as they stood frozen in the clearing. The shadows morphed into menacing figures, their outlines shifting in the dim light. Each second felt stretched, an eternity filled with potential catastrophe. Run! Shouted the stranger, his eyes wide with urgency. It was their only option, their last thread of hope. But where? The surrounding darkness threatened to swallow them whole, every direction a potential trap. Jake's small hand faltered, fear flashing across his face. Mom, I don't want to go. He tugged on her shirt and Sarah's heart broke. How could she lead him into the unknown when he was scared? Just in that bitter moment, something snapped within her. She thought of the cozy evenings spent in their little kitchen, the laughter echoing off the walls, and the sense of peace they had known. She couldn't let fear dictate this moment, she had to trust. Jake, listen to me, she said, kneeling to his level, her grip firm but gentle. We're going to be okay. I need you to trust me and keep holding my hand. Can you do that? He nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his eyes. Let us go. She took a deep breath, even though terror clawed at her stomach, pulling Jake by the hand. They plunged deeper into the dark, following the path laid out by the stranger, keeping their heads low and hearts high with adrenaline coursing through her veins. Sarah quickly assessed their surroundings. A sense of tunnel vision took over. Everything else faded away except for the trees, the damp earth beneath her feet, and the urgency of their flight. The sounds of the men behind them grew louder, close enough for her to hear their shouts mingled with the revving of engines in the distance. They had to be near. Keep running. Don't look back, the stranger urged, his voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon. She could see the shimmer of water in the distance becoming clearer, a stream that glistened like a lifeline in the haunting darkness. Suddenly, a stumbling figure emerged from the brush ahead. Splashing, they ran along the riverbank. A worried Emily darted toward them, relief washing over her face. Thank God. I thought I lost you. Stick together, Sarah commanded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Their group was fragile, held together by sheer will and an overwhelming desire to survive. They pressed on, the water splashing against their legs, and a thought struck Sarah. We could use the river to confuse our pursuers. They won't track us in the water. She knew they had to act fast. What about the bridge? Emily suggested, her eyes darting toward the sound of rushing water mixing with their panic. We can cross it and lose them on the other side. Let us make it count, Sarah said fiercely. They rushed across the slippery stones, hearts pounding almost in unison with each step, an unyielding rhythm of desperation. As they reached the opposite bank, a moment of hesitation hit Sarah like a wave. Would they truly be safe? At that moment Jake's small voice broke through. Mom, what if they catch us? I won't let that happen, I promise. She gripped his shoulder tightly. We just need to keep moving. As they pressed onward, glancing behind them to see the figures on the opposite bank yelling in frustration, Sarah felt both a flicker of hope and bodily fatigue surging through her. They made it. For now. But imbalance lurked within. What awaited them beyond this river? This transient safety? Why are they after us? Jake asked in a quiet voice, sounding so small under the weight of the world around them. Sarah took a breath, unsure how to shield her boy from the harsh truth that loomed in the shadows of their past. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. A pause hung heavy in the air and, with each step forward, she felt questions pressing against her. They had escaped the immediate danger, but the real battle lay ahead. Were the shadows behind them really gone? Or was this just the beginning of something darker? What if it's not just them? Emily whispered, eyes flickering with fear. Sarah's stomach knotted again. They were not just running from hitching threats. They were darting into something unfathomable. As they sprinted into the dense foliage, Sarah steeled herself. She might not have answers, but she had to protect her son. Somehow. But would every choice lead them further into the darkening abyss? Ahead, the trees stood tall and foreboding, as if daring them to enter. Would they find sanctuary? Or would the darkness beckon them deeper, crushing their dwindling hope? The trees loomed overhead, their branches intertwining like strong fingers blocking out the faint light from the moon. Each crunch of leaves beneath their hurried feet echoed in Sarah's ears, a constant reminder of their flight. She felt Jake's hand tighten around hers, a reassurance and a plea all at once. Stay close, she whispered, fiercely trying to maintain an aura of calm, even as her heart pounded a frantic rhythm. The darkness felt alive, and Sarah could not shake the feeling that something was watching from within. As they pushed deeper into the woods, the sounds of pursuit faded but did not vanish. A low rumble of engines occasionally broke through the silence, intensifying the knot in her stomach. Sarah scanned their surroundings, looking for anything that could offer a moment of respite or safety. Something felt off, like the calm before a storm. Do you think we lost them? Emily asked behind her, the tremor in her voice betraying her fear. For now, Sarah replied, her own uncertainty hanging heavily in the air. Hope flickered like a candle flame in a draught. She longed for the warmth of home, the comfort of a simple night, where shadows were nothing to fear. Mom, Jake's voice was small. What is happening? Why are we running? His innocent inquiry sliced through her like a knife. Did she even have an answer? Just some bad people, Jake. It's okay. We just have to keep moving, all right? Yet, the weight of her words felt heavy and hollow, as though they were wrapping him in a shroud made of her own anxiety. They reached a clearing, a stillness replacing the echoes of their rushing hearts. Moonlight pooled on the ground, revealing what looked to be a small cabin. Old and worn, it sat inconspicuously among the trees. An unusual draw of serenity radiated from it, warmth in stark contrast to the cold, dark woods surrounding them. Should we check it out? Emily suggested, her gaze flickering between the cabin and Sarah's face, gauging her reactions. The prospect felt both appealing and terrifying, a chance for shelter, and yet who knew what might be inside? Sarah hesitated, weighing their options. We might find help or at least some supplies, she said, her resolve hardening. Let us stay together though, no matter what. They approached cautiously, the wooden porch creaking underfoot. The door hung ajar, swaying slightly as the wind whispered secrets. Sarah pushed it open wider, revealing the shadowed interior. Hello? Emily called out, her voice echoing against the walls. There was no answer, just the soft rustle of leaves and the distant howl of a lone wolf. Sarah felt the instinct to go back. This all felt wrong. But they needed a place to rest. Inside, the cabin was a tatty mix of old furniture and dust. A kitchen with a sturdy table, a stack of firewood by the hearth, and a few tattered blankets tossed haphazardly onto worn-out chairs. It smelled of mildew but also of possibility. Look, Jake exclaimed, pointing to a dusty old radio resting on the counter. It looked like a relic from another time. Can we use that? I don't know, Sarah said, but her curiosity got the better of her. She moved forward and picked it up, brushing the dust off. Maybe they could reach someone. Suddenly, the distant sound of heavy footfalls brought her back to reality, shattering the fragile peace of the cabin. Her heart lurched. They couldn't afford to stay too long. The sanctuary was slipping through her fingers like sand. Quick, let us search for anything we can use, Sarah urged, her voice falling into an urgent whisper. They fanned out, checking drawers and cabinets, their breaths quick and shallow as Sarah rummaged through a stack of old clothes. Her fingers brushed against something hard lodged beneath them. She pulled it out, a small rusted knife. It was a grim reminder of the stakes at hand, the looming threat they faced. Look, Jake shouted excitedly, holding something shiny. It was a police badge and it made Sarah's heart race. Who did it belong to? Had they been here before? Were their answers tucked away in this cabin, or was it merely a trap? Mom, I think we should leave, Jake whispered, his face paling. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of dread settle back in. You're right. Let us go now. As they turned to leave, a loud bang echoed from behind them, an unmistakable sound of footsteps slamming into the ground, the unmistakable vibrations of their pursuers closing in. Run! Emily's voice was frantic, and the thrill of fear surged through them as they dashed for the door. But as they burst outside, the bright, moonlit night seemed to swallow them again, making everything appear disorienting, chaos reigning. Their only thought was escape, even as shadows swayed menacingly at the edges of the clearing. Where do we go now? Jake gasped, and Sarah felt the weight of his fear bear down on her like a tangible force. We'll find another way together, she promised, her heart desperate and frayed. Yet with each beat echoed uncertainty. Would they always be running? Ahead loomed a darker path into the heart of the woods, and Sarah caught her breath. Was it a sanctuary or a deeper abyss? Mom, please. Jake's plea pierced through her thoughts as the darkness loomed closer. Somewhere out there answers awaited, but would they have the courage to seek them? As they plunged into the unknown, a chilling thought lingered. What if the real danger lay not behind them, but ahead? They sprinted into the darkness, branches whipping past them like angry whispers. The underbrush tugged at their feet, slowing them down, but fear lent them wings. Each hurried breath filled with the tang of damp earth and pine stung their lungs, yet there was no time to pause. Where are we going, Mom? Jake's voice trembled, cutting through the rustling leaves and the thud of their footfalls. Sarah's heart sank as she glanced down at her son. The innocence in his eyes mixed with sheer panic ripped at her. She had promised him safety, yet here they were, fleeing into the blackness of the forest like prey. I don't know yet. Just keep running, she urged, her voice steady despite the whirlwind inside her. This was no time for indecision. The sounds behind them grew louder, the heavy footfalls echoing through the trees as if the darkness was chasing them. The path twisted left and then right, disorienting them. She tried to remember the layout of the woods, the landmarks she had memorized as a child. But familiarity felt distant now, swallowed by the oppressive night from behind. A sudden burst of laughter ricocheted through the trees, sinister and mocking. Emily glanced back, her eyes wide. They're coming. It felt as if the very shadows whispered of the danger behind them, the thrill of fear sharpening every instinct. Don't look back. Focus on the way ahead, Sarah insisted, choosing the direction of the nearest rustle in the distance. She needed them to believe in escape, believe they could find safety as they pressed onward. A glimmer of light flickered between the trees, drawing them closer. It was faint but undeniable, promising warmth against the chill of the night air. They stumbled through the thicket, desperate to reach it, instinctively moving toward the hope that light represented. Is it a house? Jake gasped, a thread of eagerness weaving through his fear. Sarah didn't answer, but she could feel her heart lifting slightly. Maybe they could find another refuge. Maybe even a chance to fight back. Suddenly, the woods opened up, revealing a small clearing where an old fire pit sat surrounded by logs. In the center, a fire sputtered, its flames leaping toward the sky, magic in the midst of chaos. But the thrill was short-lived. The flickering light revealed figures moving farther back in the shadows. They loomed ominously, faces obscured and hardened, marking the border between safety and menace. Stay behind me, Sarah hissed. Emily's breath hitched, fear casting shadows in her eyes as she clutched Jake's shoulder tightly. They couldn't afford to be seen. We need to find a way around, Sarah urged, looking for another path. But as they turned to quiet their movements, a voice floated toward them from the shadows. Did you think you could escape us? You can't hide forever. It was low and haunting, each word laced with a cold resolve that made Sarah's skin prickle. The realization sunk in the laughter wasn't just distant. It was drawn closer, suffocating their space. Mom Jake's voice was barely above a whisper, panic shimmering at the edges. Shua, she shushed him urgently, urging them deeper into the woods, but the heavy thumps of boots were close behind. They had no time to waste. Over there. Emily pointed toward the far edge of the clearing, where a thicket appeared thicker, almost like a curtain. They darted toward it, pushing through the branches and into the underbrush. Once inside, Sarah crouched down, her heart racing as she listened to the pounding of their pursuers grow nearer. Shadows danced beyond, and it felt as though the very trees held their breath. But then, something unexpected happened. A steady voice broke through the night. We need to get control of the situation. They can't be allowed to get away. The tone was calm, calculated, and it struck a chord of fear deep in Sarah's heart. Those voices were familiar, and the weight of realization crash-landed on her. These were people she thought she could trust. Mom, Emily whispered, fighting against the compression of panic that filled the air. Is it? Them? Before Sarah could respond, a scream shattered the silence, not a scream of triumph, but a call for help, echoing through the woods. Who was that? Jake's eyes widened with horror as realization sunk in. Stay down, Sarah urged, instinctively wrapping her arms around her children, battling the storm of emotions swirling within her. Would they really be found? Or was it finally time for them to confront their truths and find that elusive light ahead? But as her heart pounded fiercely, she realized they needed to move. What if the illuminated path was their only chance? And what if they finally had to confront their fears to escape the darkness? Are you ready? She breathed, searching their faces. With uncertainty shining back at her, she knew choices loomed like shadows just ahead. Would they stand their ground? Together? Jake asked, his voice quaking but filled with the hope she desperately needed to hear. Always, Sarah promised, her mind racing with strategies. Even as a chilling thought crossed her mind, was the safety they sought merely an illusion in this twisted game? As they readied themselves to emerge from the thicket, the realization struck hard. Would they face friends or enemies when they stepped back into the light? The night was alive with uncertainty as Sarah crouched low in the thicket, clinging to Jake and Emily. The sounds of their pursuers throbbed in the air, a constant reminder of the dire situation pressing in around them. The firelight flickered like a beacon, but the shadows were thick as the looming threat grew ever closer. Mom, Jake whispered again, his small voice trembling with fear. Are we going to be okay? The innocence in his eyes tore at Sarah's heart. This wasn't the world she had wanted to expose him to. This wasn't the promised safety she had fought for. She looked at him and took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. We will be, I promise, she managed, wanting desperately for her words to shield him from the chaos and confusion. The figures beyond the underbrush crept closer, their whispering voices sending chills down her spine. We need to get control of the situation. They can't be allowed to get away. The cold, calculated tone made it clear that this wasn't a simple chase, it was a hunt. Sarah's heart raced. She glanced sideways at Emily. They both understood it was time to act. On three, she whispered, a determined fire igniting in her chest. We can't stay here any longer. We need to find a way to fight back. Okay, Emily nodded, matching Sarah's resolve. We'll stick together, she agreed, her own fear tempered by the resolve of friendship forged in trying times. 1, 2, 3. They emerged from the thicket, hearts hammering as they pushed into the clearing. The fire blazed before them, illuminating the sinister faces of the men lurking in the shadows. Gritting her teeth, Sarah surged forward, instinct driving her completely, eyes focused on the flickering flame that had been the source of warmth moments ago. Get away from my son, Sarah shouted, voice ringing with intensity. It was a desperate plea laced with a new sense of determination. The men turned, surprised by their sudden presence. What are you doing here? One demanded, his voice low, tinged with menace. They're here to take you, one of them sneered, taking a step closer. But Sarah did not flinch. The primal instinct to protect her son surged within her. She could feel the power of that instinct coursing through her blood. Stop! Jake yelled, a surprising confidence echoing through the trees. You can't hurt us. The men hesitated, caught off guard by Jake's boldness. Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with shock. Could her son's innocence be their greatest weapon against the darkness closing in? We're standing together, Emily added loudly, rallying behind Sarah and Jake, determination flickering strong in the face of danger. Together? The lead man mocked, but uncertainty crept into his voice. You think that you can resist us? You're trapped. No, Sarah said, fierceness filling her words. We are not trapped. We are stronger than you think. Maybe you should go back to hiding, he suggested, taking a threatening step forward. But Sarah stood firm, feeling the rhythm of fear transform into courage. We're leaving and you're not stopping us. Suddenly the air shifted, she could feel it. The flames crackled, casting eerie shadows that danced across their faces, and for a moment, it felt as though the forest itself stood in solidarity with them. In that moment of clarity, something profound ignited in her heart, the realization that while she could not control the past or the chaos that pursued them, she held the power to shape their future. With Jake beside her and Emily at her back, they could face whatever lay ahead. Mom, let us go, Jake urged, tugging at her hand before she could respond. A loud crash erupted behind them, a brilliant burst of chaos as another group burst into the clearing, shouting and brandishing flashlights. Sarah's gut twisted. They were outnumbered, but Jake stood tall. Together, he shouted again, inspiring courage that rippled through her. This was their moment, their fight. Let us move, Sarah cried. They turned and ran, barreling away from the fire and into the thick underbrush, hearts bold and hearts racing. They ducked and dodged through the trees, adrenaline pushing them faster, reminding Sarah of the warmth of the life they had back home. The safety of their small house re-emerging like a cherished memory. As they plunged deeper into the woods, the shouts of their pursuers were swallowed by the shadows, and suddenly the darkness didn't feel quite so suffocating anymore. Mom, look, Jake exclaimed, pointing ahead. Moonlight flooded through the trees, illuminating a worn trail carved into the earth, a path that beckoned with promise. Hold on, buddy. They pushed toward the trail, feet pounding against the ground, hearts soaring with hope. Could this lead them out of the darkness? But just as they reached the mouth of the path, a voice pierced the air behind them. The men were close again, frustration ringing in their words. Stop them, one commanded. No, they must not leave, another cried. Emily turned, linking arms with Sarah. Jake squeezed tightly to her side. We have to keep forging ahead. Together. They echoed as one unit, a family unwilling to break, facing the threat side by side. And as they tore down the path toward the promise of light and freedom, Sarah felt a peace wash over her, a certainty that whatever awaited them just beyond the trees, they would confront it with courage, united against the shadows that dared to encroach upon their indomitable spirit. This journey was not just about survival. It was about reclaiming their lives. There was a future's waiting, they could feel it, filled with love, laughter, and every bit of magic they had worked to hold on to. Together, she whispered, her heart daring to hope as they surged forward into the unknown, boldly marching into whatever came next. And as they moved, the forest whispered its promises of brighter days. The storm was passing, and the dawn would break. In the distance, light bloomed ahead, a glimmer of hope that shined ever bright, unyielding, guiding them home. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.